Thursday, the 5th of February, the first Thursday in February, is World Optimist Day, a day where we are reminded to practice a positive, proactive mindset in order to improve mental well-being. Now, I love this day because it tells us very clearly what optimism is and what optimism isn't. Now, optimism is not about forced positivity. It's not about pretending things are fine when they're not. Optimism is not ignoring the reality. Optimism and being an optimist is about choosing where our attention goes. And this is an important distinction that we need to make early in today's episode. Being hopeful is not naive, and being optimistic is not unrealistic. So today, on the first podcast episode for February, we're going to explore World Optimist Day and what being optimistic and being an optimist is all about. You're listening to The Happiness Hack with Tim Coulson, the podcast where we take positive psychology, strength-based healing approaches, and blend them together to come up with real-world practical tips that can help us live with a little bit more intention, a little bit more resilience, and a whole lot more happiness. And today, we're breaking down what an optimistic outlook actually means. So let's start with why this is important, especially in the world that we live in at the moment. Let's be real. Our brains are wired for threat, not for hope. When the caveman was running around, he wasn't looking for things that could be positive. He was looking for things that were dangerous. Now, this negativity bias keeps us scanning for what is wrong. And with social media algorithms the way that they are nowadays, we are constantly exposed to bad news. Our stress levels rise. We're always comparing ourselves to everyone else. Optimism nowadays has become a skill, not so much a personality trait. So, when we realize that we can practice it just like any other skill, we can get really intentional about our optimism. We know that realistic optimism is important in maintaining hope, but we also know that unrealistic optimism, having false expectations, over believing in your ability, is actually as dangerous to our psyche and our motivation as pessimism. So what we want to do is be intentional with our optimism. When we do that, our anxiety drops, our motivation rises, and our perspective opens up to broader possibilities. Now, Martin Seligman was the founder of positive psychology. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, then you know that I absolutely love Seligman and his works. Now, he had some really key contributions to it. And the biggest one is that optimism can be learned. And learned optimism is very, very different to our learned helplessness. And many of us are now experiencing this, a learned helplessness, because everything is being told it's not going well. Now, I want to be clear, guys. This is not about thinking happy thoughts. Seligman broke it down really clearly, and it's about taking a look at things through different lenses. Now, two of these lenses absolutely are the key to what we're going to be delving into today. You want to look at things and see if they are permanent or temporary, if it's personal or if it's situational. Those are the two lenses that I really want to focus on, because when we look at things and we get to understand, is this a permanent change or is this a temporary setback? It helps us reframe how we can approach the situation. When we look at things through, am I personally interpreting this, or is this situation 100% outside of my personal realm? Then we understand what we can look through. A pessimistic example, for instance, would say, this always happens to me. That's making it personal. That's making it permanent. What we want to do instead is go, this situation hasn't worked out as well as I'd like, but it's temporary. I can try again. I can redo the situation with slightly different actions. That's the optimistic outlook. Today was hard, but not my whole life. Optimism changes the story we tell ourselves, not the facts. But this is so important because the stories we tell ourselves shape our behavior. If we're constantly living in a state of fear or we're having this pessimistic outlook, then it shapes how we approach situations. And those situations and the behavior that we approach it with absolutely shapes the outcomes that we receive. This takes us all the way back to one of my favorite topics, the reticular activating system. And where our attention goes, our energy flows. If we're looking for the negative, if we've got a pessimistic outlook, then we will absolutely find things to reinforce that. But if we put a dash of realistic optimism into the situation and look back on how well we've been doing or how far we've come, then absolutely we will begin to see things that reinforce that. This is why our small micro habits and small wins become so important. Everyone tells you to write a gratitude list, to look at things that we are grateful for. And sure, look, 2026, we've got a lot of things that people in 1920 or 1820 absolutely did not have. But we still tend to look at the things that we don't have. And that's human conditioning. We constantly want to grow and we constantly want to improve. But inadvertently, this mindset shift can take over and it can be really difficult to look at things that we are grateful for. That's why big gratitude lists can feel overwhelming. We know from previous podcasts that our brain responds better to small, specific, real moments of clarity. Optimism grows through noticing these little things. You know, you might go for a walk in the morning and get dew all over the ground, but then you can turn around and look at those footprints that you've created. It's looking for those moments of joy, looking for those small things that you can look forward to and grow from. Optimism is just like any other habit. It's just like your muscles. It grows through repetition. Repetition, not intensity. The more that we can practice small habits, small gratitude, we can begin to stack our habit building. We can begin to stack our optimistic outlook. This is not mindset magic. It's simple psychology of attention. What you look for, you find. So optimism isn't necessarily about adding good things. It's noticing what's already there. The small positives that we can have in our everyday life. Sip your morning coffee and actually savor the flavor. Sit down, enjoy solitude and peace and quiet. Be present with your kids or your partner. Really engage and enjoy the conversation. These small positives remind our nervous system that it's okay. Our gratitude and these small moments begin to shift our brain from threat and into safety. You can absolutely, even on your worst day, find one good moment. It's about appreciating the effort that you put in, not the outcome. So notice it. Pay attention to it. These small moments don't fix everything, but they start to soften the edges. And this is where the really key learning comes in, because our optimistic outlook and our optimism fuels our resilience. Now, I'm going to get into resilience in next week's episode, but what we want to keep in mind is that resilience is not the ability to withstand anything. It's the ability to adapt. So people with an optimistic outlook absolutely, repeatedly recover faster, problem solve better, and persist longer. Being optimistic doesn't deny the pain, but it reduces how long we stay stuck in it. And it's an important thing to understand, because when we start to practice optimism, it can feel disingenuous, especially those of us that have struggled with a depression or an anxiety. It can feel really hollow to sit here and go, well, 23 hours of today was horrible, but I kind of enjoyed this 1 hour. But that's the shift we need to make, because the more that we can expand our boundary, the more that we can adapt our mindset, the more resilient we become. I don't want you to think of this as toxic positivity, because toxic positivity silences sadness. Optimism allows it. And this is an important difference, because optimism says, this is hard, but I can still cope. Both truths can coexist. This starts to build our emotional flexibility. Everything starts to stack on top of each other, and slowly things become easier. Slowly we start to notice more things to be optimistic about. So how can we bring this into our daily happiness hack? Well, it's quite simple. You can practice 3 small wins at the end of your day. Before you go to bed, a little moment of reflection. What are 3 things that went well today? If you can't find 3, just start with 1. One thing that went okay. One thing that I handled better than before. One thing that I am grateful for. Because even that small thing counts. Everything stacks up. Everything starts to build slowly over time. So when life feels heavy, optimism isn't about finding all the magical silver linings. It's not about letting the pain go, but it is about finding something that went better than we expected and not letting the pain write the whole story. The gentle, realistic optimism creates a little bit of space for us. Space allows us to breathe, to regain our perspective. And once we've got a little bit of distance, a little bit of perspective, then we can choose to react. We can choose to respond. So, World Optimism Day, every year on the first Thursday in February. I want you to celebrate it. I want you to look forward to it. And remember, World Optimist Day isn't a celebration. It's an invitation to practice a more positive mindset, about building optimism, not discovering it. The small moments that compound, practice our perspective. So, as we close out today's episode, that's my challenge for you. I want you on World Optimist Day to really lean into it, to look for one thing that went better than you expected, to practice a healthy, positive, realistic mindset, because more than ever, World Optimist Day reminds us that the day is truly what you make it. You've been listening to The Happiness Hack with Tim Coulson, the podcast where we really practice positive psychology and personal growth. And if you're ready to make some real positive change, to really lean into your optimistic outlook this year, why not book a session with me? TIM-COULSON, timcoulson.com. On World Optimist Day, the day is absolutely what you make it.